sharing.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, man. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Of course, with everything happening in the world, we're trying to find creative ways to still educate students about the kind of careers out there. And you were like the creme de la creme from our arts panel that we had this fall. So I know a lot of students are interested in the film industry and just kind of your multifaceted interest in the arts and your creative expressions. So we'll start it by, for some of the students that didn't get a chance to meet you, can you please introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your background in life so far?
Sure. So my name is David Verde. I also use my first name sometimes in public, which is Angel. And I'm a filmmaker and I own a small video production company in Stanton.
Nice. And if our students might be at home looking for something to stream right to their couches, shameless plug, tell us about something that they might be able to access.
Yeah. So one of the larger projects that we produce that I actually host is a travel series, and it's outdoor focused, and it's called AWOL, Air, Water, or Land. It's on Prime Video, and so that's kind of one of our largest projects that kind of actually incorporated beyond just kind of the personal interest of enjoying the outdoors, a lot of uh, personal and professional priorities, if you will, that we have as a company, accessibility, diversity, just trying to put that message in very organic and non blatant ways to have those voices, and including conservationalism for that particular project. But that's one of our largest projects, but we also work on other small things. So.
Okay. So of course on Prime, we've got 4 episodes that we can access. And you mentioned that that's a big project and a big undertaking. So for some of our students that might be interested in film or the arts, kind of to get something like that, streaming and available to people, kind of take us back to the beginning, like where did that project start? How long does it take to find the right partners? Do you have to raise capital? Like, as somebody that's starting from the ground up here, like kind of give us a snapshot of what something like that looks like.
Yeah, so AWOL is a really great example. So before not to say that I was ever a blogger, but there was a web series that was kind of like my first dive into kind of like travel based content. And so fast forward, I ended up landing a couple jobs working for other production companies producing television and travel media for them. And that's kind of how I got an idea for the model, a business model, and understanding the business side of things. And I think, personally, I kind of always jokingly always wanted to produce a travel show or even host one, in some cases. But it was a nice reality check that sometimes getting that behind the scenes experience is really valuable before you can make that first step independently if you choose to do so. But those working on those productions is sort of where we created kind of our core values and our belief systems that we wanted to make sure we incorporated. But as far as producing goes, that scale, producing a show that's intended to be like a proper series. That's not meant to just be like easy digital internet video digestion. It's meant for both the small screen as well as like the slightly larger small screen. But it's intended to be presented in a way that you may be familiar with television, traditional television and media. So at that scale, it is a lot of work. Like a single episode, time wise from start to finish could be an 8-month process from being able to find the funding for a particular episode, doing pre-production, and then finally getting to production. But then post-production, when you're actually editing the episode, that could take upwards of 12 weeks on its own. So it's really rewarding work, no matter what, no matter how difficult it may be. But it is a very time consuming part of the process. And and I think even like particularly now, a lot of people are watching a lot of television and a lot of media and movies. And even from our scale, we're a tiny production crew. Like we have maybe 6 people total who work, and only about 3 people who work on multiple pieces of the project.
Mhm.
And that's like one department on most other projects, like on like Game of Thorns. That's easily just like the craft services and like catering department by itself. So we're trying to produce a whole show with those limited resources. But I think what that project for us, it really taught us of how to really leverage our creativity and our personal interests and just kind of diving into a project in a way that where we had full control of it, and taking years of experience as a collaborative team of friends and colleagues, and just kind of pursuing that and seeing what happened. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really all it was. It was like, we don't know what we're about to get into. We have some ideas, we have background in this industry, but not at this level. So
Yeah. But it sounds like you guys had all kind of practiced and you guys had picked up different production skills along the way. Like, obviously you were working with other people hosting travel shows or, doing some of the behind the scenes. So how long were you working kind of under someone else's tutelage? Like how many years or months of experience did you have there? And then we'll segue into how did you find these team members? Because I think especially too, as a lot of people enter the creative workforce, making sure that you have the right team, whether you're creative or not, is really important to be successful. So tell us just again, like how long did all of that background take? And then how'd you find these teammates?
yeah, so like I don't have any like like traditional formal education as far as within this field. So a lot of my experience really starting from far back was as far as being a teenager, that's like when I started doing photography and video. But once I became got into the professional field, a lot of it was somehow stumbling onto opportunities in the professional space, working alongside these individuals who not only had years of experience, but they did have that formal education. And so it was very, it was a long experience of working as a commercial and editorial photographer, working as a photojournalist alongside writers and editors, and as well as other photojournalists themselves. And then, that transitioning into working with filmmakers. So, I think what all those backgrounds, working in entertainment, working in news media, all those things kind of snowballed and kind of built that resume and foundation. And I think no matter what avenue you go, especially if you're a college graduate, being in my place now, a lot of times I do have the opportunity to mentor young, aspiring film professionals. And I think the first thing I like to tell them is not to forget what they learned, but it's like to understand what fundamentals and background and history they were being taught in class, but to understand that the practical experience that you get when you take every opportunity that you could potentially have, whether it's big or small, is extremely valuable. And every single one of those projects that you may work on, or every single job you may have, will give you something that you will come back to, and it will become extremely valuable to your knowledge and experience down the road when you may be working on something larger scale.
Awesome. So just kind of a lot of cumulative experiences led you there, which
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a lot of just pursuing different forms of the same type of new media. It's just, it went from working from the art aspect of it to the journalistic aspect of it to working in the fashion industry, again, doing the same type of media. At no point was I just doing photography or video. I was sort of always having to do a little bit of both. But that got me to the point where I knew that storytelling, visual storytelling and film work really was like, that's kind of where all of those experiences and all those skills and that background that I had the opportunity of doing, that's where I was able to finally go, okay, actually, this is where my skills and my interests are best suited, and I can actively put it to use and be excited to do work every time I start a new project.
Nice. So that kind of helped take you from a generalist into a specialist role.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that in the creative field, no matter what, I DJ'd for 20 years, so that was something. I just retired from doing that. I say retired, but I just decided, I was like, it's time to hang this up.
You
But,
wouldn't turn away a gig.
not now, but I definitely, I definitely wouldn't, like about a year ago, I still would have said yes. But, I have friends who, also they also moonlit as DJs, and now they're they're visual artists. They're mixed media artists, and they had lots of different chances to kind of just dabble a little bit. And I think sometimes dabbling can be good if you are using it to what it can benefit you, which is giving you lots of small doses of things to potentially find what you may actually really be interested in, and that then you can zero in and just pursue that particular interest fully. But it also gives you that understanding that, particularly in the arts, that our career is never a straight line. We're never really pursuing one version of the arts for a lifetime, and some people do, and they are the minority, I feel. But most of us will spend
the exception versus the rule.
Correct, yeah, and most of us will just be constantly weaving in and out of all these different versions of the arts to finally land on what we end up being interested in. I think that's part of the creative personality in general. Anyways, we have short attention spans.
Well, yeah, that's how you become prolific, right? Like you complete one project, move on to the next.
Correct.
So as you moved into, kind of the host role and figuring out where your niche was in film, how did you know what teammates you would need, and how did you ultimately find some of your partners in your current endeavors?
Yeah, so I think a lot of, especially in the arts, and no matter where you happen to work within the creative field, you're going to meet and work with a lot of people just constantly, and you're going to be introduced to them. And some you're going to get along with really well, some you'll get along with personally, and then some you'll get along personally and professionally. And you both have this, and you have your friends, but also at the same time, your creative perspectives align almost perfectly. So, a lot of it was really just kind of collaborating on other things. Like, I mean, not really collaborating, was kind of like, hey, I'm doing this thing, do you want to help? And often you find from doing that is that you find those people who are always game. And as your career progresses, a lot of times your careers progress in a similar trajectory. Like, you're kind of progressing slowly up at the same time. Like, very rarely will you have someone just like leave the whole pack behind. You guys are always kind of moving along. And so I think having that Rolodex or that contact list of creative friends and colleagues, whether if they're personal or professional, I think that is also a part of just working in the field consistently for an extended period of times. Because after a while, not to say that it's just about connections, but a lot of it really is about relationships, and relationships is kind of at the center of having projects that rely on a team, and you have to just kind of have good experiences and bad experience to find those people that you can call on. And so for us, it was kind of that. I've worked with countless number of individuals, but it was like, when I decided to produce this show, and I was like, well, I don't know anybody who'll host it, so I guess I'll have to host it. But, I immediately called some of my friends who we worked on significant projects that we really enjoyed, and we learned a lot from them. And so it was almost kind of like a no-brainer to reach out to these people, because not only were they extremely talented within the visual arts, I knew that they would get the project and they'd be willing to come aboard.
Nice. And so you mentioned reaching out to people and just asking them, to come along for these projects. Would those always be paid projects, or sometimes was it experimental? A little bit of both is how you found collaborators through the years.
Yeah. I think like whenever you're working on projects, sometimes they're paid jobs and sometimes they aren't. And I think both of those have a benefit. Obviously, one has a financial benefit. You can
Sure.
buy food and beer and pay rent, but
Yeah.
the other one has a lot. Like when you're just working on a personal project and you're just like, well, let's just do this. You have a lot of autonomy to do it exactly the way you want and have no other voices really challenging that. And you don't have a client that you have to do revisions for because they prefer it to be one way or the other. And I think both type of projects have been kind of key to those relationships that I have where when I do need somebody to call. And and in the same idea that that we've grown together as creatives and professionals as we've gotten older. Some projects do have a scale that it's like when you go like, hey, would you be willing to jump on this project with me? They're like, oh yeah, that project's definitely too big. Like you're gonna have to pay me.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no doubt. Like I'll make sure we get money so y'all can get paid. Even if I don't get paid, I'm benefiting a lot from it. So sometimes you may not even get paid as kind of the creative director of whatever project it is. But what that again is, it's all about building a catalog of work, and all those things just keep elevating your abilities and your skills and things that you have that become more instinct as far as like being able to produce it. And I think when you have those things that are easy to do, that you can take on certain projects and with a relative amount of ease. But then when you have those projects that have more challenges, you can still take that risk and just go ahead and commit to it, because you know that you'll be able to call those, again, you're back to those individuals who you can call, whether they're there to help you through the project or they're just to give you advice. A lot of it just comes down to just that network that you're constantly building.
Nice. Well, you just mentioned too, like creating a catalog of work. And so some of this, of course, will be dependent on which creative medium somebody uses. But when you're trying to showcase your ability to somebody, whether it's for a project partner or whether you guys are trying to get professional work, is there a website or a platform or a way that you encourage students to start thinking about making a catalog of their ability?
Yeah, I think every discipline has like a different avenue, especially with social media. You have
Sure.
Instagram and YouTube and I guess Facebook is still used, but I think it really just comes down to whatever your medium is. Of course, film, we can use YouTube, we can use Vimeo, or not Vimeo, Vemo, or whatever it's called. So you have different ways to produce that work and place it on a website and push it out. There is a place where eventually you'll find yourself in a position where you do have to make a certain level of investment to reach a new potential client base. And that could be if you're doing commercial, let's say you're a film professional and you're trying to pursue commercial work, you may have to make the investment to join professional organizations or travel to meet with ad agencies to sell to them that you're a vendor that they want to work with. But in more of the creative side, like whether it's narrative or unscripted or even like journalism, you may have to make a personal commitment where you have to move. Say you want to live in a small place like Stanton, there's some downsides in certain careers, and so you may have to make a decision to leave for a little while to establish your career, so that way you can then work from wherever you please. So I think no matter what, like right now, I think is a really interesting time because we're social distancing. There's so many mediums that require other human interaction, and so I think right now is a brilliant time, no matter what discipline you may be in, is to try to challenge yourself to find ways to produce whatever work it is that you do is close to that professional standard, if not at it or above it, that you normally would try to achieve. And take that time to use this to build a catalog. Like you can use this time to build a catalog and also like play around with other variables. I mean, at the end of the day, like if I want to make a film, like I may have to interview someone through the internet. Exactly. Yeah. So, I think right now is a really interesting time where people can take a little bit of a step to, because they have to, they can take a breath and pause and put some of their free time into creating valuable work instead of just trying to produce, like there's a lot of folks who will try to produce work, video work that is similar to other people because it may gain attention because it's similar to something that a lot of people like. And so instead, maybe you could try to not try to do that and try to find your own voice and use that time. So that way, when you do have the freedom of human connection and access to the world again, you can then elevate it and try to find opportunities to do it in a more organic, close proximity way, like, in a way that's in real human life with other people. So,
yeah. That's what my extrovert self is just like, oh, I can't wait for the day when I can hug my friends again. Little things.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, I definitely want to be respectful of your time. So as we're wrapping up here, just thinking about the current situation and thinking about someone that might be graduating here in the class of 2020, with the uncertainty and the creative new methods that we're connecting with people, is there any general advice you have for folks looking to enter the creative workforce right now?
Yeah, I remember, to actually try to not make a long story out of it. When I started working in the fashion industry, I was living in South Carolina and then Virginia. And so a lot of the key players were in New York City. And so I lucked out and started reaching out to people who were a few steps ahead as far as career and access goes in general, because they lived in New York. However, on the large scale of things, they were like at the same level that I was. And so I just started reaching out and making relationships with individuals back then. And so, like, once I had the access to start attending Fashion Week, which is what I did at the time, that's when I started actually building substantial relationships that turned into paid opportunities. So I think right now, especially within the arts, there is limited opportunities for entry level positions for a college graduate. But now may be a really good time to reach out to people, reach out and start communicating. Just start a dialogue, and whether it's with collaborative relationships or whether it's with professional entities, both places I feel like people have the time to just chat. And so I think when all this is done, I think our medium is going to be sought after. Like the arts is going to be sought after, media, music, like traditional art, like artworks and paintings, and theater. All of that is going to be sought after quite aggressively. But so I don't think there's necessarily going to be like a sudden shortage. Like, I don't think that's going to be like something that you aren't going to be able to get. But in the meantime, I do think those right now, like I said, it's just right now is the time, is all those people they have more time, and you might be able to just build that relationship through video chat, through text message, and you might find a way to collaborate right now, and it could just be a step. It could be nothing, but it could open up a whole opportunity that you never would have thought would happen. And it's just, again, so much of it is just about saying hello. I think a lot of times it's just saying, hi, my name is David. This is what I do. I like what you do, and I want to be friends. And sometimes that's just enough. And a lot of people right now are looking for people to talk to. So it may be a real great time to leverage that.
Yes. Well, especially I think a lot of creatives, right, tend to get that energy from other people and that expression. So it's a good time to reach out to folks that might have a little extra time.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much for your time today, David. And if our Mary Baldwin students want to reach out to you, what would be your preferred way that they try to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can visit our company's website. It's dventertainment.com. And I think we have our email or contact form. You can just email. I'm like very open to answer questions and entertain aspirations of Hollywood or whatever it is, and happy to like give reality checks, but also at the same time give them in a very like approachable way, so that way people aren't discouraged to pursue whatever version of the career that they may want to pursue. But yeah, dbentertainment.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, David. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.